It's Donna Komar, our town assessor. And I'm also going to say that Bill Abbott, who is the liaison to that department, who has done some yeoman work in there, I think they can best lead this discussion on what is a reval and is it something we want to do in 2021 or later.
Oh gosh, if we're doing it in 2021, somebody give me the agenda, because it doesn't come about that quickly. So this is the beginning of our conversation. And the agenda did say reval in 2021, so I made some notes, and what I put down was, what does that mean for the 2021 roll? Because that begins in July, right now. We're beginning the 2021 roll right now. But what we are doing in 2021 is we are revaluing. I've been here before discussing this. We are going to revalue the commercial properties. So now, having just finished, due to COVID a little delay, we've just finished the 2020 assessment roll. Going forward, we've got to get that notice and information out to the commercial property owners. There's 700 parcels that we're going to be revaluing, and it starts right now. It's been fully budgeted in 2020, which means to you that there's no new cost in the 2021 budget. As many of you know, but for the people listening at home and online, the assessment roll runs middle of the year to the middle of the year, so it's going to cover two budgets. This particular portion of a revaluation project has been budgeted last year, and my new budget doesn't include that, but it includes planning towards what do we do with the rest of the roll. So I think that's kind of what we're here to discuss, is to plant that seed and begin this conversation, because that's going to take a while. It's not something that you do overnight. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. Well, for example, let me tell you about the 2021 project. The purpose of that project is to realign the equity on the roll between the classes of property per the state's analysis. So I respectfully disagree with the fact that the state finds that the commercial properties were not in line with the residential properties. They even admitted that they had some room for improvement for their analysis and their formulas. They agreed with everything I said, but their results stand. Therefore, this is our response to the state. We'll revalue our commercial properties, and we'll put them in line with our residential properties rather than revaluing on short notice all 16,000 properties, because we don't have the resources for that. That takes a plan. That's going to take 2.5 years to put together. So this is step one. We'll revalue our commercial properties. We'll put them on at the same assessment value ratio rate as where the residential currently sits. We won't put them on at 100%. And what that will do is it will realign the equity among the property classes on the assessment roll. We'll be back in compliance. There's no fine, there's no slap on the wrist, there's no law that's been broken, really, okay? So they're just asking us to realign our properties. That's what we're doing. That's what's happening in 2021.
Bill?
Going forward.
Going forward. Do you want me to pick up that cue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Here's a few facts about revaluations. As the first step in roll preparation annually, the assessor analyzes the roll in various stratifications to find not only the level of assessment, which means what is the ratio of the assessment to the most recent market value, but also to find any inequities. There is no statute or mandate of a certain percentage of assessment to market ratio. We don't have to be at 100%. There are towns in central New York that are under 5%. Most of the downstate area is under 1%. There's no statute that says you have to revalue your properties at certain intervals of time. So as long as your roll is equitable, in New York State it's about equity, because the ratio is meant to get that math, take the assessment, and relate it back to market value. The only thing it does say is it can't be over 100. So, for Webster to embark on a townwide revaluation project using an outside vendor will cost well over $1 million, and it will take 2.5 years to plan. It is a zero-sum game, and that means that there will not generate any revenue. It will not raise additional tax. But what it will do is redistribute that budget differently among the same properties. So maybe somebody right now is paying too much. What happens when a person's fair share is just too much, right? So if their assessment is slightly overassessed and we wipe all the assessments away and theirs comes back in, somebody else's will be out because honestly, it's not going to be 100% accurate on 100% of the properties. So there would be your encouragement to go forward into a cyclic plan so that the same people are not always over or underpaying, okay? But statistically, this assessment roll is still very sound from the 2004 revaluation. It's just no longer at 100%, and the market is continuing to change. So the tax cap changed everything because it really put the focus back on the expenditure of money. The budget can't increase beyond a certain amount, and so when you raise all the assessments up to 100%, that tax rate must come down because the fulcrum in that teeter-totter, if you will go with that analogy, is the budget. And now that fulcrum's not allowed to change size or shape by more than that 2% tax cap, which we all know is not exactly 2%, right? So if your fulcrum is the budget and your assessments go up, your rate has to come down. So your tax rate will definitely change if we revalue all the property. It has been a long time since the well, this is what I'm saying. So the tax rate will drop. A reval has a tremendous cost with no financial or tangible return on that investment. Not as a whole. All it will do is redistribute that tax burden, that same burden, differently among the same properties. We're not going to take the existing ones and tweak them. If you do a town-wide revaluation, what you're doing is wiping out all the assessments and getting new ones. We're going to do that with a commercial class in 2021. And then we have some plans for, if we could properly staff and resource with a specific experienced skill set in the office, how can we curb back that $1 million price tag? Is that depending on the skill set and how much our staff can help manage that and get ahead of that and not need to hire out, that price tag is between 1.2 and 1.6 million. I'd like to get it under $1 million for you. I'd like to see how significantly under $1 million we could get that. But if the goal is just to make all those new assessments, I'm here to tell you it's going to cost you over $1 million. Sorry for that news.
We don't kill the messenger.
All right, thank you. So the questions I think that the board needs to ask, and I'd like to try and help find a way to answer them, is what is the purpose and what are the goals for a revaluation of assessments townwide? What do we hope to accomplish? What are the resources we need? And how can we accomplish those goals? So thank you for the invitation. Tonight what I would like to do is hear your thoughts on that, take that into council, and see what plan I can come up with in a long-range plan. But you've already approved the valuation of the commercial properties for 2021. That has begun. I have turned over a copy of our final roll to a vendor, and he and I are going to be working on that. Part of the problem, as you know, is I'm going to be in small claims for the next 4 months because that's the new norm in that particular avenue of our office. I don't have anyone to hand that off to in full, so I'm becoming very divided. So when we talk in a couple of days about budgets, you're going to hear more about this and how that does affect the 2021 budget. But remember, that's my 2021-22, okay? So whenever I'm going to be budgeting project, it'll always cover at least 2 budget years. There will be nothing new in the 2021 budget to cover the expense of the program that we've already begun. We fully budgeted that, and we will assign a purchase order to carry that balance over, and I don't expect it to run over. I will be as surprised as you if it does. It's not this vendor's mode of operation. So what thoughts do you have? What questions can I answer? How can I be of help to you so that we can together formulate a plan going forward?
Bill, you're closest to this department. What do you have to add?
Well, you've answered pretty much the questions. What's the value? What's the reasoning for it? What benefit does it? What benefit of it is it, and how much is it going to cost, and is there going to be any financial benefit of it whatsoever? So what's the purpose of it?
What is the purpose of it? Every year I analyze the roll to come up with a level of assessment, And among our residential class, it is very tight around the number that comes out. So you have to look at each neighborhood code. Some neighborhoods don't have a lot of sales this year. Maybe next year they have some sales. So you look at it in a broad picture and you look at each individual. I look at the property style. I look at the age of the properties. I look at the neighborhood codes. Our housing is so tight around that. Now, will there be anomalies? Sure.
Yeah.
And that's what the grievance process is for. And you know we've been very busy with that. And the board makes adjustments. And when they come to us directly, we do our best to make adjustments when we have the time to offer that extra service, right? And small claims. That's there to make adjustments. So the pieces are all in play. We just walk through the process.
What's the advantage of being at 100% versus what we're at? And if there's not an advantage, why are people doing it?
Before there was a tax cap, changing your assessments from fractional assessment to 100%, we have a lot of jurisdictions an opportunity to pocket some money along the way.
School districts as well.
I didn't say it.
I did.
Thank you, Bill. So there was that opportunity, but the tax cap, like I said, changed everything.
Yeah.
So to put it at 100%, what you will get is that intangible. It's much easier for the taxpayers to understand what am I being valued at. It's very easy. Right now we have different rates, so you should hear all the conversations going, well, which ratio do I use and for what purpose? And then, you know, the state uses a generic term called the equalization rate, when in this particular case, when the rates don't match, they should have said residential assessment ratio. So we go round and round. I'm not trying to confuse them, but it is confusing, okay? So it's easier for the taxpayers to understand when it's at 100%. And your rate will be lower, so that when people are looking to purchase property, it's easier for them to compare your tax rate to someone else's tax rate,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, I agree with
So
that.
our tax rate looks really high right now, but it doesn't look high if you understand the whole process. And I have to admit, a lot of people don't understand that process, that the assessments are lower. They're thinking, oh boy, I got a deal. Look at the deal I got. It's assessed for $100,000 and the home's worth $130,000. Spot on.
So in theory, if we had a reval and my house were to go up 100%.
Up to 100%?
Up to 100%. My rate would drop, and
But-
in theory, what I pay out would be approximately the same.
The same.
If you were correctly,
Exactly,
if you were
right,
correctly
yeah.
assessed before, yes.
Right.
So if you're correctly assessed presently, and we change all the assessments, we wipe it out and we put you to 100%. If your assessment right now reflects properly the market value, you're not gonna see any change in your tax bill.
Yes.
But not all assessments do,
Right.
okay? I could have just completed a reval, I'd still be here telling you the same thing, because it's mass appraisal, there's a margin of error, and that's why there's an appeal process. That's the purpose of the appeal process. I never take that personally. It's there, and for the people who really feel like they need to walk through those paces, we walk through those paces. So, for the people who are under-assessed presently, where their home is worth more than what the assessment is representing, they're gonna see an increase in their tax bill, and they should. And where the people right now are presently a little over-assessed, so it's reflecting a little higher market value than it's worth, because there are those, they're gonna see a decrease, and they should. So that's what I mean by redistributing. Does that make sense?
I'd kind of, this is round numbers, but right now we tax, a town tax to the citizens, about $15 million. And the tax rate is $5 per thousand. I'm just using round numbers. Based on our equalization rate in the mid-70s, if we went to 100%, our tax rate would drop from $5 per thousand to $3.75. But your value would go up. Do the math, you'd still have the same tax bill.
Right.
So that's the net sum zero.
Yep.
And that's the part of it that for me, the thought of $1 million to $1.5 million paying for something that has little tangible value.
Right.
I mean, you could argue that it's got value, like you said, that our tax rate would go down and all that stuff, but
Right.
that's a lot of money.
If your goal is to
Yeah.
do this
It's a lot of
soon,
money.
if your goal is to do it soon, there's a large price tag with it. if we can lay out a plan and do a little bit at a time, because we don't have the staff to value that, we don't have an appraiser, we have not found an appraiser yet. So if we take the time to staff the office and do as much of this in-house as we can, because what also the tax cap changed is people don't need to do that townwide revaluation anymore. There are towns that are in the cycle, that's being encouraged and supported, but it's not a law, okay? To do 3 years, every 4 years, bring their values back up to 100. Because it's easier to understand, it's easier for taxpayers when they're shopping for a house to compare from town to town. If we want to be in that cycle, we have to first get to 100 and then put it into that cycle fashion. But they have the people in-house to do it. We have to completely remap our neighborhood codes. We have to do all of our land tables that go into that mass appraisal system. We need a new residential model, multiple models actually, right? We have to clean our sales because there's just only so much that our skills has been able to do, and our focus has been so much on STAR, and now it doesn't have to be on STAR. So I'm presently cross-training some staff. I'm trying to bring them into the back office, as I call it, right? Learning some other things. Like I've got some people learning to do more sketches and understanding and interpreting those sketches of New York State standard sketch on a property form, to be more interactive with the public, because I've had clerks who've been specifically dedicated to exemptions. We don't need to do that anymore, but give me time to train them before we throw 40,000 people at them. And really need some valuation support in-house, you know. But if I had someone who could do that analysis, then we can do those neighborhood codes, and then we don't have to pay for someone to do it.
But we will be paying that person, just to be clear.
I believe at the very end, if we were to take parts of the role, like we've just done the commercial part of the role, okay? And we had laid out a 2 or 3 year plan, but I think first you need the resources in place. I don't know what to tell a vendor we would need, because I don't know what skill set we have, because we haven't filled the vacancy. I can make up for the other part of the skill set that's not there, but I can't also add the whole project to it, right? So at some point you need to bring in a vendor. They are set up to do all of the informal reviews, run those papers through their high processing printer machines, which we don't have. You know, if we had to run all the pages that need to be run and then end up with 16,400 property valuation components printing out, we're going to put DPW out of business for weeks. They're not going to go print anything out of their printer, right? We don't want to do that to you, Josh. So, I mean, there's benefits to that. So when the tax cap came along, now not needing to do start to finish, soup to nuts, as they say, we can do an a la carte. And we just say, I don't need you to do these things, but I do need you to do this list of things. And price it out for us. Tell us what that will cost us.
And Donna, I don't want to shortchange
No,
it,
that's all right.
We're running short on time, and I would say that, you know, proven that this is such a fluid process, we post these agendas really going back 5-6 days ago. And we had a meeting yesterday with Bill, you and I, and Paul Adams, our finance director, and the one thing that was, it had to do with the 2021 budget.
That was that
Which
purpose, yeah.
we're in the middle of the budget season right now, as everybody should know, and that's, we did not have $1 million to $1.5 million ask in 2021 to do this reval.
Right.
For a lot of reasons, but we don't. That conversation, that meeting yesterday, I thought was really, it was really good. In fact, Bill came up with a suggestion that nobody had thought of before, and so that's in play now. And I think the board will see as we go on in the budget process how the assessment department for 2021 potentially is doing, could do the 3-year process to get us to 100%. And do it in such a way that doesn't cost $1.5 million.
Right. There will be something at the other end.
Responsible and
There's always going to be something.
There's always going to be
at the
something
end.
at the other
Yeah.
end. I just don't want it to be $1 million for these taxpayers, because in my world, the return on the investment is a feel-good thing. And I think, I'm not going to say Webster, I'm going to say, you know, New York State and America in general, right? We pay too much for things that just feel good. And there are people who are overpaying, there are people that are underpaying. We do need to redo this more cyclically.
Yes.
But we don't want to be unwise about how we get there. And I think spending $1.5 million, unless you tell me we need it right away, I'll start calling vendors tomorrow. But
No.
I don't know that we need that, because I'm here to advise the board as we work on this in conjunction with one another. I'm here to advise you that our residential section of the roll is very equitable. It's just not at 100. That's why we have a ratio, right? And this year that ratio was 76.42 for the residential, okay? And then we have this lower hanging fruit called the commercial section, and I'm just not happy with the state. They agreed with everything I brought up about what they did wrong. I said, yeah, but we don't have time or staff to do it again. So we got a lower rate for the commercial, and we just got to bring it up.
If you do the commercial separately from residential, do you have to do the residential revaluation within a certain period of time?
We do not.
There you go.
We do not. It's all about equity. It was always about equity.
But you can separate the two categories.
You can.
And you can do it legally
because
and
we will look
properly.
we will look at all 700 commercial industrial properties. That will not include commercially zoned vacant land. That's different. We will look at every one of them, so there's no selective reassessment. We're selecting a category of property, and we will wipe out all those assessments, start over. We are going to get new valuation factor file. We're going to get new commercial land tables. We're going to get new commercial neighborhood codes. It is a revaluation of that class of property that's permissible. Because we didn't single any one property out.
It just, as we move off of this, like I said, it'll continue on during the budget process, so the board will see even more meat on the bone of how the department is looking to do it over a 3-year period. But if anybody's watching this at home or whatever, says, geez, I don't understand. All the other towns have done revals in 16, 17, whatever. The way I understand it, Donna, is we were hamstrung as a town going back to 2004 because Xerox somewhat had us in a real bad position to move forward with a reval.
You can call it a bad position. I wasn't here at the time. I wasn't part of that negotiation, but most negotiations end up with both parties being a little bit dissatisfied, and that would have been the thing that maybe wasn't best for us, okay? But yes, if we had revalued the property before that contract with Xerox ended, then we were looking at another lawsuit, which was then paying for that $1 million revaluation plus defending a lawsuit. So it was best not to revalue. On the heels of that, there were a lot of projects that came along the way with the town. We did renegotiate a contract with Xerox right now, doing a revaluation right now of the commercial class. Will not change that contract whatsoever because we learned something last time around and we built in what will happen during a revaluation. So Xerox will not be worried about this at all.
Thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All
I
right.
know I've just opened a huge thought process in your head. So
Very thorough.
the door is
As
open.
always.
It's going to be a long, ongoing conversation, and together we will plan what is best for our residents and our staff. Right?
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.